assuming that all things cancel out, Mana Worm is the card, right? You actually need Mana Worm, and then you don't care. But assuming that everything else is kind of equal, getting just a couple of minions that sit there is just damage made.
As a lot of respect being given to both Mana Worm and some other 2-drops that could come down, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice we see, by Yogg, keeping the Frostbolt gives him the ability to fight back against a turn 1 Mana Worm, which he realizes is pretty much essential. But this hand for Yogg is looking pretty dire. A whole hand of spells that just don't do anything unless he gets that minion on board. If he can get a Sorcerer's Apprentice with this hand, his turns would be looking absolutely absurd.
But Kallax does nothing either until Yogg gets a minion, because he's got double Shooting Star. So his hand is actually atrocious for the situation as well.
It's true. Both decks kind of going to be doing a whole lot of nothing.
Like play Sorcerer's Apprentice, get it Frostbolted, and then just wait.
Pretty much. And so he's wondering here, is he even allowed to play it? It is very possibly going to met with a Frostbolt. Your opponent kept a card that clearly was not Mana Worm.
This is really tricky.
Goes for throwing it down. The upside of it not being cleared off is pretty high, even if it's just the 3 damage that it gets you. But Mana Worm being picked up off the top is a very nice way to get things rolling here for Yogg.
But now that's just going to get cancelled out as well. And you see this a lot with aggro matchups, where they just cancel each other out and you end up with this sort of really weird nothing stage for a while. And then something happens, like someone draws a Luneth and the game just ends.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're looking at here, honestly. If someone could pick up the Luneth, because these hands are so grim, that would just end the game almost on the spot.
Yeah. As now, obviously, he needs to think back to his GCSE maths here, when I'm sure his statistics would tell him exactly what the odds are of hitting 3 out of 5 missiles on a 50-50.
It is a 50-50.
Is it straight up 50-50?
Yeah. Same as 2 out of 3 for Marquet missiles.
You see, that's why I need your brain. When you were explaining to me how Shudderwalk maths works with chain gangs and grumbles and Zolas, it blows my mind. I always get it wrong.
So do I.
It's so
counterintuitive. I just make it sound like it right.
Yeah.
But no, that's always been a bit of fun for working out that. But a Luneth, talking a bit of fun, is just going to be Yogg's plan now. Is just hang on there, play it.
Pretty much. And in a matchup like this, where it's been very, very even at the start, no player has gone particularly far ahead, a Luneth is the best possible card you can have. It does not get better than that. As going the roundabout way here to kill off the Cosmic Anomaly instead of just Frostbolt, because that would be a little bit of damage overkill. Instead, he can get the remainder of the missiles to connect through to face while he still has spell damage on the board.
I'm just very amused by the fact these decks are just doing nothing to each other.
Whoa. Whoa. Thanos almost dipping all those missiles.
If it wasn't for the other Thanos, it would have missed them all.
Yeah, that's true.
It was the last one that hit.
Yeah.
That would have been a 1 in 64.
Is that how statistics works?
Well, you're just calling Thanos to do your homework for you?
Yeah. As options here, ooh, a little bit tricky. Shooting Star is like very, I mean, you're only getting 1 mana reduction, so it's kind of the worst in terms of the actual amount of mana you're gaining, but it's just by far the best spell you could have here. All the others are too expensive.
So
it is, I suppose, at this point, reminding people at home who may be used to the old school tempo mage lists that these are not running secrets of any kind or any secret synergy. So any spell you pick will not be counterspelled, so that gives you a lot more leeway to go for the more expensive cards like Flame Strike. But even then, Shooting Star in combination with spell damage does the same thing, but for literally a 7th on an infinite because it's 0 of the mana.
That many. It's really alien at first when you're playing the deck as well. You keep looking for your, where's my secrets? And then you realize, oh, I've got to control the board a lot harder than I used to. It's much more important that my minions stick, and it was always important because you do have that extra bit. And Yogg actually keeping back the Luneth because he feels that the tempo is too important to give up right now.
Yeah, and I think given that you are making a big tempo swing here, developing your own board, killing off your opponent's board, the chances of them being able to both kill off your minions and seize back board control is very low indeed. So the only real choice here, I suppose, for Kallax...
It's the same choice that Yogg just had to make.
Exactly. Like, does he go for Emissary, Shooting Star, Ping? It means he's taking way less damage.
So he needs to think, does Yogg have a Luneth? Would Yogg have played a Luneth last turn if he had it?
I think probably not. I think you would expect him to make this play instead of a Luneth. You had a decent amount of damage on board. You expect... Yogg expects Kallax's turn to be very weak, because he only has 3 cards left in hand.
I like playing a Luneth here the more I look at it, because next turn you Shooting Star 3 minions a lot of the time, because you get more spell damage from the Luneth.
Yeah. And
you just get that card advantage back. You're a bit behind. Can you take 5 plus what's in Yogg's hand? I think the answer is maybe. I was going to commit and bailed, but I think the answer is yes, you can take that damage.
I think you can as well. I think if
but
you don't...
you've got so much spell damage.
So what, if you... The thing you need to decide here is if I go for Emissary Shooting Star now, do I face less damage on the following turn than if I go for a Luneth now? Which is quite possibly, yes, you will be facing less damage on the following turn if you do go for the clear now. But will you be facing less damage for the whole course of the game? The turns that you have coming up are so much more powerful if you play a Luneth.
Whether this is right, whether this is wrong, I'm really pleased to see this play. I think it's what I would have done. He risked a lot of damage coming in from the spell damage of +3. And now he's going to get to stabilize to some extent because of it.
Right, and we have gone from a game in which both players were doing basically nothing to a game where it's just going to go into hyper overdrive here. This is just going to get...
Hyper overdrive?
Yeah, you can read my new script for the next Star Wars movie if you want.
So, I like the anomaly here into Black Cat, into just clear this stuff up, have some minions on board, give your opponent something to do.
Yep.
All the time they're messing around killing your minions, they're not killing you, buying you more time for your Luneth. And, you know, Kallax Luneth first. Put that in your script.
Nice, very good.
Shooting Star, and he is actually just going to take advantage of the Cinderstorm while he can.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're taking advantage of a clear board, but you develop a whole 3/3 less. I guess this leaves you a lot less vulnerable to spell damage Shooting Star from your opponent, which you are very much expecting to see. One of the Shooting Stars that's already come from your opponent was from a glyph. But even then, this was far from the most obvious of decisions.
Yeah, I think it actually works out well. Now we describe it like that. You're expecting, as you say, the Shooting Star. You don't want to get 2 for 1, and you are putting extra 2-turn lethal on the board. You're not expecting to die in 2 turns, but now you've got that tempo advantage. It doesn't need to be a big one. 4 damage is plenty.
Yeah.
And you're taking mana away from Yogg. It's not really the cards that's a problem when you both got a Luneth. It's the mana.
Yeah, I mean, it's how much stuff you can do on a single turn, which is why I would have probably preferred Black Cat there, because what, you're still vulnerable to Shooting Star. If they make a tempo swing like that and kill off your 4/3 and develop their own board, what do? Then just play Black Cat and go Fireball? Like, you don't have any synergies, really, with spell damage at this point.
You are keeping a bit of spell damage up, but yeah, you've still got the emissary. Black Cat would be interesting to me.
As now, look, Shooting Star still comes down, so I suppose Kallax may have been punished with the play either way.
But now he does have the Black Cat and the emissary to repopulate, and there's maybe no Shooting Star.
He is, however, taking a tremendous amount of damage in the meanwhile.
Yeah, he needs to set up lethal here, and I don't know if he can.
Well, he needs to set up lethal whilst also trying to stop his opponent from killing him, which we can clearly see is now simply available to Yogg on the following turn. And I'm not sure if there's any way that Kallax can deal with that. If he gets Counterspell off of a Primordial Glyph,
yeah, that does it.
That's kind of all he's looking at.
Do you play for that? I mean, Yogg still has 9 cards left.
Fair point. That's a good point. Kallax does not know that he's dead. He has to suspect it's close. And, like, playing Glyph on this turn is just fine. He doesn't have much stuff he wants to do with his mana, really. Like, if he goes Black Cat, Unexpected Results, Ping.
That's too slow. That's not going to work, I don't think, but maybe it is. He needs to... I think this Fireball needs to go face this turn.
Really?
From where he's at. I mean, we can see that... Just talking in terms of what Kallax is looking at.
I don't think he goes for that. I think you get your opponent down to 12. You have no other burst damage in hand.
I think you Glyph anyway and see what it offers up, honestly, and then you can make your decision a lot more easily. Because either way, I think you need the Glyph for damage or for defense, depending on what you want to go with.
He's going for it. Needs to hit pretty much exactly Counterspell if he wants to survive this turn.
And now
but he nails it and goes Fireball to the face.
So a 1-mana spell, if there is such a thing, would do it. Actually, other spells would too because of the Apprentice. But he won't play the Apprentice because it might not be Counterspell.
It might be Explosive Runes, exactly. And he might just play a Fireball into this because if it's anything else, he survives. But now with Counterspell being found, head goes into hand for Yogg.
Yeah, and Kallax sneakily looking across there as well. Just see what Yogg's reaction was to that. See if he's got any more burn in hand. Don't know if he can read that, but he did have a bit of a sneaky peek. So does Kallax have any auto wins here?
as lethal is not discovered on the backswing for Yogg. If Kallax is not able to kill him here, something else would have to come down, assuming this board is cleared off, which is not necessarily a foregone conclusion.
He can also just Primordial Glyph, clear the board again, knowing that he's probably not dead, although, yeah, there's a lot going on there.
I mean, he has to do something like that. Like, everything else is too slow. Playing minions is too slow here, basically.
Unless the minions are down on an empty board somehow with another shooting star.
Yeah. The shooting star would be insane here. He's got so much spell damage in hand.
Then you just plonk all the spell damage minions down. Then you've got the equivalent of a fireball on board, plus spell damage out of the wazoo.
But it's just such a dense turn. You have so much stuff you want to play. He has to perfectly figure out how he spends his mana. And you can clearly see, counting on his fingers here, he's perfectly sequencing what he wants to do here in order of priority. You want to play the Mana Worm to buff up the attack, but you want to play the spell damage in case you get Shooting Star off of the Glyph. But Glyph always has to happen here, I think, is the main key card here.
It's got to be quick, but not as quick as APM Priest.
Cinderstorm is not bad.
He's got to be quick, though. He's got to play Cinderstorm.
He's got to be incredibly quick. Meteor can clear the board, however. He's going for it.
He's going to do that.
Not dead. This play is good enough.
And this is kind of what we were going with at the start of the turn, except he had to panic do it, which is clear the board and get something down there. He gets ready for lethal next turn.
Has now Cinderstorm off the top.
If and remember, he can reduce everything with Sorcerer's Apprentice.
That's right. So he goes for Glyph to find Shooting Star or Fireball or Frostbolt or anything here to deliver lethal. As we can see, none of these cards help with that situation. Meteor can clear the board, I suppose.
But that's not enough.
That costs
he can play his own minions.
3 mana at that point. It's 3 mana for Meteor because he has the Glyph Reduction and Apprentice on board, which means he can then go Cinderstorm Ping.
Yeah, he can clear this up. He can get some damage in. He can set up lethal for next turn, most likely.
Or he could go Emissary Cinderstorm. Or he can go Fireball Cinderstorm, which is 1 damage off lethal.
But he wants to get stuff on the board to soak up the opposing Cinderstorms and missiles. Otherwise, he's just going to die, and he knows it because Kallax has basically drawn his deck at this point.
Cinderstorm and Fireball now leaves him... Oh, no, wait, it costs 3 mana, so it has to be, like I was saying, Emissary and Cinderstorm.
Okay, so has Kallax got it? He has got a lot going on here. I think he's got it.
That's just lethal. It's just lethal with Emissary, Fireball, Frostbolt, Ping.
Wow. And there's Mana Burn as well. Mana Burn? Maybe that's the wrong game.
Fatigue drawn off the top.
Thank you. He's just double tripping, checking. I've seen Kallax do this multiple times.
I think that's just it, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that was an absolutely insane final game to close things out as Yogg is eliminated from the tournament. He was 2-0 up at the start of this tournament, but Kallax 3-0s his mage here.
Wow, and Kallax cannot believe he's got through that. Whoa, and he's made his second semi-final of the year, the other one being Toronto earlier on. So, yeah, we talk about the Hunter Aces of this world being consistent, but Kallax is now up in that sort of equation with 2 semi-finals, and power to add, he's only got to beat Tice.
Well, that could be fairly difficult. Tice has been looking on form, but what an insane way to close things out. A one-off off of Glyph. Yeah, coming down here, mate.
Yeah, come have a look. Give you a moment to have a breathe.
Yes, thank you.
So, what was the highlight of that match for you, apart from winning?
Me making a misplay as a rogue against druid.